Is the United States a friend in need for European countries? As the energy crisis tightens its grip on Europe, efforts to find alternatives to Russian energy are not as easy as promised. The share of Russian natural gas in EU's total imports has halved from over 40% in 2021. With the winter approaching, countries are scrambling to import energy from elsewhere, particularly the United States and Norway, only to be met with skyrocketing prices. German and French political leaders have made their displeasure public, while U.S. companies are raking in record revenues. Who is profiteering from this energy crisis? Why are friends not so friendly in times of need? I'm pleased to be joined here in the studio by Mr. Teng Jianqun, Research Fellow at the China Institute of International Studies, and Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow at the Chinese think tank Taihe Institute and founder of Asian Narratives. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So let's take a look at the price fluctuations of natural gas. According to Dutch Tidal Transfer Facility, or TTF, that's Europe's main benchmark for gas trading, gas prices in Europe hit a record high in late August. That peak you're seeing there, reaching around 340 euros or about $330 per megawatt hour. Since then, it has seen a dip, but it is still, at this moment, more than double the pre-war prices. So, Mr. Teng, let me go to you first. What exactly are the reasons of the current energy shortage?
Yeah, you can give a lot of reasons to such a shortage of energy the European countries are facing now. I think two important things we should mention here. Number one is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. After at least 7 months, the conflict is still there, and I'm sure that as a result of such a conflict, the EU countries imposed several rounds of sanctions against Russia and also gave
including sanctions on imports of energy?
Yeah, of course. At least the sixth round of sanctions against Russia, including crude oil, gasoline, and of course this time, the EU countries, have been discussing the possible sanction on gas. And this is one important reason. Another is, of course, is the strategic consideration by some countries, because before the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, some countries had proposed that the European countries should cut off the energy connection with Russia.
You mean the United States?
Of course. And they said for decades the European countries had been hijacked by the Russian energy, so they should cut off such a connection or cooperation with Russia. So this is actually long-standing policy by some countries.
Well, right now, definitely, the European Union has become the largest destination of the United States liquefied natural gas, according to the wish of some country. However, French leaders seem not to be happy. For instance, French President Emmanuel Macron complained last week that in the spirit of great friendship, we will say to our American and Norwegian friends, you are super, you supply us with energy and gas, but one thing that can go on for too long is us paying 4 times more than the price at which you sell to your industry. He added that is not exactly the meaning of friendship. And German Economy Minister Robert Habeck also last week used the words astronomical prices to refer to U.S. supplied gas. He called for more solidarity from the U.S. in assisting its energy-pressed allies in Europe. Is a kind of profiteering going on here, Einar?
Well, yes, there is, but it's, you have to say, why did it happen? And, as was just said, I mean, this is because of an ill-fated war that was started and pushed onto Russia by the United States by continuing to impose into their security zones. Everybody knew that this would result in war, so you can't be surprised that it had. Now, what is surprising is the U.S. said there's going to be a war. Remember, they said yes, there's going to be an invasion. Did they warn the Europeans? Look, you should be making other provisions, since, for instance, Germany gets 40% of their energy from Russia? No, they didn't. So there are those in Europe who are beginning to feel that the U.S. does not have their best interest at heart. I was at a symposium where it was clearly said these were ambassadors who said we cannot rely entirely on the United States. This is a very big statement.
But this is astonishing. I mean, Macron, for instance, the German leader, is making it public that they're not happy with the kind of price that they're being charged.
Sure, they're not happy, and they're not happy about what happened in Saudi Arabia backing OPEC's 2 million barrels a day of oil decrease. But these are market factors. A lot of these oil companies, they say, well, where were you when we were actually having to pay people to take oil? All right, when we were losing billions and billions of dollars, where was the friendship then? So right now, there's not a lot of trust in the world, and that's one of the major problems. And everybody is kind of like, well, when it's good for me, it's good for me. When it's good for you, I don't, it's not my problem.
Well, according to U.S. official data, in the first quarter of this year, the U.S. LNG exports to the EU and UK tripled than the amount the same period last year. And in the first half of this year, the U.S. exported more natural gas to the European markets than the whole of last year. And actually, the United States now is the largest LNG exporter in the world. So is that the kind of excellent opportunity to rid Europe of its energy dependence on Russia that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was talking about?
No, I don't think that way, because the cooperation between Russia and the European countries has been there for decades, and of course the European countries have got a lot from such energy cooperation. And this time, the United States would like to increase its export, not only gas, but also the oil and some other energy to European continent. So this is actually a competition between two major powers. How can control the market in European energy market? So this is a very tricky situation the European countries are facing now. If we look at the recent development, especially after the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, you can see who has got the largest part of such cooperation, energy cooperation. So this is a very clear-cut signal to the outside world who would like to take the market of European energy.
Well, at this moment, I mean, not only the United States is taking over the market share, but the price is extraordinary, as we can find out from the U.S. official website. The U.S. LNG price jumped from $7 to almost $13 per 1,000 cubic feet from July of 2021 to July this year. That's almost doubling, okay? And it was it's an increase of 3/4, and the price was even higher in June. So it is estimated that Europe will have to pay as much as 10 times more than usual for natural gas this winter. Is the situation really bad? I mean, when European leaders were drafting their response to the crisis, when they were rolling out these sanctions, did they not foresee the energy cost reaching so high, Einar?
No, I mean, there's quotes from European leaders who said, look, Russia has the economy the size of Portugal. They're completely dependent on selling their energy to Europe. They aren't going anywhere. We can push and prod them and try to get them to be more amenable or change towards what we want. But, one of the things you have to consider about this energy situation is the downstream effects. Because what happens when Europe has to pay more for energy? In essence, their production will go down because they cannot be competitive, neither at home nor abroad. Right now, you're seeing in Germany and France, companies pouring out, looking for alternatives where they can produce and still be competitive.
While filing bankruptcy domestically, there are a record number of
It's not
companies.
only that, but I mean, they're decimating. I mean, the effect of this is going to decimate the European economy. It's going to hollow it out from the inside because they can no longer be competitive. This is, no one is really talking about this. Where is the U.S. saying, look, these are our allies, our friends. We have to figure out a way to help them.
Well, the U.S. will be happy to take in the investment.
Well, they take in the investment, but it's very short term. I mean, the amount of trade between the U.S. and Europe is monumental. To undercut your own ally and partner, all right, over the long term.
Well, again, coming back to what Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, was talking about, an excellent opportunity to rid Europe of its energy dependence on Russia, but at what costs?
Crippling Europe.
Mr. Teng. I mean, this scene from the United States, and now the Europeans, companies and ordinary citizens are facing a real crisis.
Yeah, the big issue is how can the European countries get such independence on energy? Can European countries produce more oil, more gas? No. The answer is no. So this is actually a very interesting question we discuss now. And if you look at the U.S. policy toward Europe, this is actually coin with two sides. On one side is a high land of morality. How can we go ahead with the higher morality, and another should be the commercial interest for some countries concerned, especially the United States. The United States has already got a lot from the recent rocketing prices of energy, and so the Russian side would like to use its energy as a tool. It can get some benefit from such a trade, and this is commercial interest. And on the other side, Russia can get some political interest because some European countries, like Hungary, they are not interested in the sanction against Russia, especially in energy. So there is no solidarity among EU countries. The 27 countries are not in one position.
Obviously, last week during a summit, they were not able to reach any agreement on whether to put a temporary gas price cap. But very simply put, Einar, could the U.S. government do anything? I mean, you can talk about energy being in the hands of private companies. It's market force. Market drives up the price. When the supply is smaller, the demand is high. But could the U.S. government do anything if they're really friends with the European countries?
Well, it'd be very difficult to intercede with the actual companies themselves. They could just say there's a windfall profit tax and we'll use that to help our neighbors. But really it has to be a more comprehensive action. I mean, in the U.S., they're at the peak of what they can produce in terms of compressed natural gas, which is, of course, much more expensive than gas going through a pipe.
Okay, it's going to be a very complicated situation. Many thanks to Mr. Teng Jianqun and Einar Tangen. We'll take a very short break, and when we come back, I might talk with Chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies of Armenia. Stay with us.